the middle of our tournament where my friend John said he found a body in the bushes over there. I ran over there because I'm a healing monk to try and help, but obviously my magic wasn't strong enough because the dude's body was missing a head. So my friend decided to try and use a necromancer spell, which didn't work, which I knew it wouldn't. And apparently we contaminated the crime scene because that spell uses a lot of glitter.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
I gotta tell you, you brightened my day, ma'am. All right?
That's what the last guy said, and then he sued me.
Okay, what's happening, people? Happy Easter. So glad to be back. There has been a lot of in real life nonsense popping up and keeping me off of YouTube, but I have returned and with a lot of energy. AJK's here. All right, glad you're in here. Hey, okay, guys, if you don't follow Donkey's Noggin on Twitter, please make sure you do. He is hilarious, hilarious. Lana Del Turtle's here. Hey, so glad that you're able to join. And yes, Carrie is remarkable. We are so glad to have her on here today. She is such a strong contributor to the Karen Reed movement. If you guys do not know her, she is a paralegal. You can find her account on Twitter. Her her Twitter name is, please hold, Carrie Cherry 75. So please make sure you follow her. And before we get started, I just want to thank a couple of people who have made this whole studio so, well, streaming area is going to call it. So I just got an enormous screen and I can see everything on the screen. I don't need to be wearing reading glasses and like getting super close to my screen to be able to see the chat. I can look at everything with no glasses on, and it's fantastic. I'm gonna have to take a little picture of this area and thank Steve, because Steve is the one who made it to where I can see everything now. And then so Catastrophe Kate is making right now these necklaces for those of you who maybe work in Massachusetts and don't want to very, very loudly share your Karen Reed support. If you'd like to be a little more subtle, Kate makes these little necklaces, and we are working on her getting a link to where if you would like one, she's been making these. They are super adorable. She has all kinds of different styles, and they have this little ducky on them. They are so cute. So if you guys don't know Catastrophe Kate, it's Catastrophe spelled with a K and then K8, Catastrophe Kate. She is fantastic. And then I have something from a previous guest that I'd like to read to you guys, because y'all, this is the reason that we do this show. I got this in the mail. It says, Britt, thank you so much for having me on your show. Sharing my story has helped build my strength and regain my confidence. I appreciate you and all you do. So that is from a guest who was on here sometime in the past couple months. So in this movement and for, helping bring this kind of confidence to certain people. So before I go on any further, I just want to tell y'all thank you for that. And please, please, please give the most warm of welcomes in the chat to my friend and our guest tonight, Carrie Ann. Hey.
Hey, Britt. Thanks
So
for
glad
having
you're
me. I'm a nervous wreck. to be on YouTube. I'm used to writing and not talking in public, but you know, the people in my real life are sick of hearing me. They don't follow this and they're sick of Karen Reed, but I want to talk about it. So thanks for having me.
Right. Yeah, you've got absolutely nothing to be nervous about. And I'm sorry, just to kind of give you a little warning, another internet company has bought out the internet company that services my area, and they are digging up the fiber optics outside of my house right now and
On
replacing
Easter.
them. Right, right. So yeah, we've got a little bit of that going on, but yeah, nothing to be nervous about. Everybody here is savage, but not toward the guests. It's more about what we're talking about. So
Awesome.
yeah. So definitely is a welcoming bunch. I think I've got the best chat on YouTube. Just saying. So, Carrie, you are a paralegal. That's your trade,
I
correct?
am now, yes. I started out in journalism. I have a journalism degree, and I worked as a newspaper reporter for a decade or so. And most of that time I was covering courts. And then I kind of did a career change. Newspapers are a bit of a dying breed. You know, they're closing, they're reducing the number of days that they print. And I was like, I kind of need a plan B. And, you know, I wanted something that could use those skills. I can write, I can research, I can ask people questions, etc. So I went back to school and got another degree. And so I've been doing this for about 10 years now. I've worked in, I did do some criminal defense. I am currently in a civil plaintiff's practice doing for the past couple of years, I've just been this one case. It's a mass tort case. It's and a bit of an environmental case. It's like an Aaron Brockovich type case where we are suing the government for contaminated water on a military base. They poisoned hundreds of thousands of service members and their families. So that's what I do now. But all the while that I'm working, and I work a lot, I'm a workaholic, I am constantly playing trials in the background and YouTube. So a bit of a court junkie in real life and on YouTube.
Well, we can certainly tell that you know your shit with Karen Reed. That's for sure. Your insights have just been so thorough, and they definitely show that you have a lot of knowledge in the legal field.
I treated this case like one of my cases. Like I legit have notebooks. I have notebooks. Like once you start hearing this and listening to this and learning this, you're like, and I had to like write it down to try to make it all make sense. But yeah, I legit have, I have trial notebooks, my own.
Well, and you know what though? It's almost imperative that you have notes with a case like this, especially. There's just been so much to double back on, and so much has happened that makes you quite literally question your sanity and question just how American our criminal justice system is anymore. And you can probably speak to this, but I've seen so much incompetence, misconduct, conflicts of interest, all of which alone would cause even a guilty person to walk, much less an innocent one.
Right.
So
it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And what makes me crazy is like I don't think they're embarrassed, and I don't understand why. Like how, you know, starting with the cops. Like my biggest interest in what got me involved in this case has been the police investigation, because that's kind of when I did work I worked in a law firm where we actually defended police agencies in civil lawsuits. So like, for example, one of our cases was the correctional officers at our jail tased a guy, and of course their family sued, and he died.
sure.
And so it was like that kind of civil defense. And I've always been kind of following police procedures. My husband for many years and up until recently was a public information officer for a law enforcement agency here in the Low Country of South Carolina, where we live. And so he would be the person that would have to, go on the news and like defend the crap. And so it's just always something that like that aspect of the cases interests me. And this one is just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. Like I know that you said you did not follow the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case. But I think you probably know the basics of it, that they killed her son and daughter and buried him in the backyard of her new husband, right? Like, that much of it. And I watched the interview. There was an interview yesterday with one of the detectives from Idaho. And the way he spoke, the way that they have handled themselves and conducted this investigation, and just how, seriously they took this. They knew they were in the public eye on this big case. They talked about how we want to do everything right. They felt this like deep obligation to the family. They felt connected to the victims. Like this cop was so honorable. His interview was so powerful. And then you look over here at this case. I mean, you've got Michael Proctor, that's one, but I mean, you can't even be bothered to take a photo of the evidence. You can't be bothered to take a photo of the murder weapon, the taillight. You've got the solo cups, you've got the leaf blower. It's just this big joke. And I cannot wrap my head around how this happened. And for a fallen officer, one of their own, that just takes it to a whole another level, I think. And they do not seem the least bit embarrassed at all. And I can't wrap my head around it. Like, I sort of feel like I often wonder, like, when they lay their head down on the pillow, do any of these cops like feel any kind of like, I should have done better, I could have done better? And I don't think so.
No, I think you're right.
Blows my mind. And all of it together, putting it in the context of this case, it's like, how can you trust any of the evidence? How can you rely on this to convict a woman and send her to prison?
Exactly. How is this admissible, for one? Like, for example, they keep saying they found bits of taillight in Officer O'Keefe's clothing. Well, of course you would, if they were in the same bag for 6 weeks.
That was one of the first things I did on Twitter. That embedded thing, right? Like that. It's
right.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm like on a little bit of delay. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. But for 6 weeks, nobody logged this in anywhere either. It just, I would know better, and I'm a lay person. I don't even have your background.
The shirt and the pieces of taillight from the search sat out in the open next to each other, possibly in the same bag, but they did sit out in the open for 6 days until Trooper DeChico booked them into evidence. Who is Trooper DeChico? He is one on some text messages with he is one on the text messages about putting the pressure on the ME, the whack job ME, but also like some of the words that DeChico has used about Karen Reed are "fuck her, bitch." That's who booked it into evidence after it just sat out in the open for 6 days. And the biggest thing, the crime scene sitting just open for 8 hours blows my mind. And I see people comment sometimes, well, like, it was snowing, it was a blizzard. Okay, fill up a little thermos of coffee, they can run the heater in their car and they can sit outside. Yes. Like, it just, that they didn't even think enough, like, it blows my mind that they let that crime scene sit for 8 hours. I do know that was one of the things that the Canton audit pointed out that they should have done, but just that alone, like, how can you trust anything from that scene? And just, you've got this I keep comparing it to the Daybell investigation and just how meticulous they were. Yes. And then here you've got over here for a dead cop we're going to just drive by in the morning on our way into the office, on the way home. We're just going to drive by and see if it reveals itself.
And it keeps magically showing up. Magically. And like you said, that Daybell investigation shows that they know how to do their jobs, which means that all this presumed incompetence, or at least that they're hoping you presume is incompetence, is really a facade, right? Because it's better to than, it's better to look like a dumbass than to have it known that this was done on purpose and that it's, a cover up or something like that.
Right. I mean, even in Massachusetts and in Norfolk County, you see that they know how to do investigations. These same officers investigated the Walsh case and the Turret case, and they are capable. But like, you have Trooper Proctor on the stand, doesn't even there's a segment where Alan Jackson is asking him about the chain of custody, since we're talking about the embedded taillight in the shirt. He is completely clueless as to what's a chain of custody. And the same thing with Buchanan. He's like, well, I guess they were just laying out. I don't know. Nobody know. I don't know. I don't know.
Of course. Praise God. So when did you, because you said that you're from South Carolina. When did you come across the case? Was it mid-trial? Was it pre-trial?
It was just before the trial started. I stumbled onto, it was actually Melanie Little. I started watching some of her pre-trial coverage. And I think just the fact, it was the news about the FBI investigation when the TUI documents came out. That's kind of what got my attention on it. And then just watching the opening statements and learning more, you're just shocked every day. But, speaking of, I'm being from South Carolina and watching trials, being a trial watcher, did you follow the Murdaugh case at all? The Alec Murdaugh case?
Yes and no. It was very little more than headlines for me with Murdaugh.
Well, there was, I'm always comparing and contrasting these cases to one another. And there's an aspect of the Murdaugh case that I see in this case, and not the murder, not Alec as they say in the South, not the murder of his wife and son, but prior to that, the son that was murdered, his name is Paul Murdaugh. He was facing trial. He was facing trial of his own for a boating under the influence causing death. He was as a teenager in a drunken rage, driving a boat, 6 people in it, and crashed into a piling on the bridge, and a beautiful young woman named Mallory Beach was killed. And if you watch there's a Netflix documentary on the Murdaugh case, and they go into the Paul boating accident quite a bit, and there's a lot of similarities in the Murdaugh dynasty, as we call it down here. But you've got this powerful family in Canton with the Alberts, the Murdaughs, they had to come down to the scene and walk through. They just let them take the boat out of the water, take it home. Everybody was afraid of Alec, all the law enforcement, because, he was a big time plaintiff's lawyer. He was getting money for these people, everyone, for lawsuits and various things. He just had a lot of connections. The family had been prosecutors, or we call them solicitors here in the South because we're fancy. And, it was just this influential family who had a lot of control over the police department. And in that boating case, as soon as Paul is put in an ambulance and he is on the phone with his dad, and they're talking out in the open about, we got to say that Connor, this other kid, was driving the boat. They're playing, it's this wild, just the powerful family, their connections to law enforcement. And when they get in trouble, just how kind of they work their connections. And you kind of, from what I understand, the Alberts are a powerful family there in Canton and have been for, decades. Their connections to the police, people being, fearful of Brian Albert, and, just the sloppiness of the investigation as a result, or, it's just interesting to see kind of those different things play out in different cases.
It is. You may be interested in this. In my own time, this is something I've worked on over the past couple weeks. I put together a little web of Brian Albert and, all of their hang on. Oh, goodness. Sorry, let me find my way out of a paper bag here. Here we go.
The Stop and Shop bag?
Oh, right. I do. I have a Stop and Shop bag that I made at home too.
I was going to say, we don't have those in the South.
No, we don't. I had to make one from an Aldi bag. So
oh my God.
I didn't even include Higgins on this. I have a second version that has
awesome.
Higgins. But I mean, just look at this. He's got two brothers who.
Yep. One runs the town council. One's on the local police.
Yep. You've got Chris, who is in the Canton Select Board. And as a Canton Select Boardman, you have influence over the local PD. You also have Kevin, who is a Canton police officer. And then going from there, you've got the lead investigator of Karen, right? And
who's
then
that town there next to Bev, Judge Bev, with the in between Judge Bev and Jen? Who is that?
in-law or Matt's brother, the one.
Oh, okay.
The one who threatened Dayton Carney and said
they gave us Auntie Bev.
Yes, that's where the Auntie Bev nickname came from. And then it also shows Colin being in Proctor's wedding. This is just like my first draft. It's a little something I'm working on for people.
That's awesome. You've got to share that.
Well, I'm working on a little something that may help people who are beginners or.
Oh my God! Yeah, you have to have a chart.
Exactly. So I have something kind of showing the charges, what the Commonwealth feels that they have on Karen, and what Karen's way of combating that evidence is, and all that. But there's like 7 different points of influence that Brian Albert has over people who are directly involved with this investigation. And it's just wild to me that this has been allowed to Yes, AJK. I did include that in my second draft. So tomorrow when I do my Karen Read for beginners, that will go in there. But anywho, so it's just wild to me that this has been allowed to move forward despite the optics of all those connections,
right,
that all these witnesses have with the investigators.
Right. I don't even think that the audit addressed the fact that the Canton police had a conflict. Did they? Did they even really address the fact that I don't remember seeing that as one of their points,
I don't recall it either. I'm saying that as somebody who did not sift through every single page. Yeah. I read the grand total of 3 pages dedicated to Sandra Birchmore. Yeah. And I did read the direct findings that Five Stones put forward, saying that, there were definitely some mistakes made. But we found when they said we found no evidence of there being a cover-up or any intentional misconduct, I had to pick my jaw off the floor.
Yeah, I don't know that Canton, I don't know how much Canton is involved in that as much as MSP or the Massachusetts State Police. Like, I mean, I do know, like, you do see points where Kevin Albert is arranging witness interviews, and you've got, Berkowitz randomly driving by and finding a piece of taillight that revealed itself. They do have some like definite inappropriate roles. Yeah. But speaking of, like, I was talking about how it just blows my mind that no one is embarrassed, that that no one is even like, you're right, we should have done better for John O'Keefe, right? Like but the Canton Audit, I guess, public meeting that they had, it was on like a Saturday a couple weeks ago, and I have seen some clips about that, and they just like laugh off that Kevin Albert and lost his gun and badge drinking with Proctor. Like they're just dismissive of it. Like, you'd be amazed at how many cops drink on their way home. Like, it just like, and Judge Bev denying the defense's motion to have a police expert, testify, saying that, like, these are things that, that people know. They don't need an expert to walk them through this. And maybe so, like, yes. But the Canton police don't know these things. The MSP don't know these things that everybody is supposed to know. They don't think they did anything wrong.
One way to combat that ruling, or at least to get around it, that I saw from attorney Andrew Myers, who has his own show on YouTube. It's called About the Law. He said that in the small amount of experience he has with criminal defense, what he's done in the past is just pull up the police code of conduct, but it has to be from the year that the incident occurred, because he has embarrassed himself and pulled up the wrong year. And, there was something changed at the time or something. But he had said that if the defense were to
I think you froze. I'm frozen. I don't know.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Like, oh no, please don't leave me. You were frozen. And I think you're frozen again.
Okay.
Are you back?
I think I'm back. Can you see me? Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, y'all. All right. Sorry. Like I said, they're working on digging up these fiber optics. I'm really considering either giving this new company a chance or getting a Starlink. I'm weighing it in my mind, the pros and cons. But anyway, so sorry about that. So if they do, though, pull up the 2022 code of conduct for the Canton PD and the MSP and just sift through it. Now, it would take a lot of Carrie Ann's to really go through that and be able to line up every cognitive action that they took and put that next to the code of conduct. But that's one way they could get around that.
I mean, I kind of, when the audit came out, I'm looking at it and it's like they spent, I don't know how much money. What was it? Like a couple $100,000. And it's basically like the things that you should have learned in the police academy or even from watching Law and Order. Like it was the super basic stuff. And, I went online and like the Department of Justice has like, their own like kind of guidebook for investigations, like investigations 101. And it's like, you go through that list and it is like, they did nothing that both Canton and Massachusetts State Police did nothing that, that you're supposed to do, like separating the witnesses, not letting Jen McCabe go traipse through the yard into the home, wake up the homeowners, taking the picture of the body of John O'Keefe on the lawn when they arrived, of securing the crime scene, of when finding the taillight, like documenting where they are, mapping them out, like as much as we make fun of Trooper Paul and bless his heart, like he's just, but like in all honesty, I don't think he knows what he's doing, but a person like he's working with bad data if he knew how to work with data at all, but like there's no like map of where all the taillight was found. Like, they didn't do a chain of custody. They didn't photograph the murder weapon. Like if you go down that list in the investigations 101 guide, it is like the most basic of things. And none of them were followed.
It is. So what was your first reaction when you heard that Karen's vehicle had really been picked up about an hour and a half before Proctor's report said that they picked up that vehicle? Because I think that was, for me, what made me go from being curious to saying, oh, nuh-uh, this was intentional.
Right. Well, and couple that with, the fact that, and this is more just like sloppy investigation that, and I realized it was snowing. I realized it was a blizzard. But, they start calling out the CERT team, putting out the calls at like 10:30 in the morning. Tolly did. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I'm not 100% sure why it was the CERT team. Like my understanding is they look for missing humans. Like I don't know why it was them and not like a crime scene services team. But, they started rounding up these officers who starting at like 10:30 in the morning. They don't get the go ahead until much later in the afternoon, 2 or 3. They all start, digging out of their driveway and heading to 34 Fairview. They've got quite a team there waiting, and they're all just sitting outside waiting for someone to tell them to go ahead and get started. And that also coincides with the time that the vehicle is arriving, right? Like it arrives at what, like 5:31 or something like that. And they get the go ahead to search at 5:45. Like, why is that? Like, why were they all just sitting outside as it's dark now? Like,
yes.
It's dark now. And, that search, just like we had the search in the morning with the leaf blower, which turned up, and, and they were so proud of that. Lieutenant Gallagher is so proud of that leaf, that like go back and listen to his testimony where he's like, it worked great. We got all the way down to the bare ground. He keeps saying bare ground in this huge, like a 10 by 10 area. And we can see it on video. And they search well enough that they unearth a couple pieces of clear broken cocktail glass, a few drops of blood, but they don't see any of this other taillight. And then the CERT team comes in the dark, more snow has fallen, searching the same area. They're using a grid search. They're like shoulder to shoulder. They're going in very detailed. That was a detailed search, even though it was at night and more snow had fallen. They had shovels. They had rakes. Lieutenant O'Hara talked about, and they only found. Well, we don't know. It's a mystery. Tully's report says they found 3 pieces. Wasn't written until a week later. At trial, if you remember, that's what he pulled out of the bag that miraculously turned into 5 pieces. Either way, they missed 40 more pieces. And, that's interesting to me. And also, Lieutenant O'Hara said, we'll come back tomorrow, bring this team back tomorrow. And they have a dead police officer, and they say, nah, we're just going to drive by every day for a couple weeks on our way to work and on our way home and look for things to reveal themselves. Like that is ridiculous. That is terrible. And I don't ever want to talk about the O'Keefe family, but like, I can't understand why they aren't angry at the way the police treated their family member, their son, their brother. It's disgraceful. Like, it is
They failed
embarrassing.
him.
And
They 100% failed him.
yeah.
And
And
you know, I'd
Go ahead.
be furious if it were my family member. And this is what irks me so badly, is that, you know, even if Karen were guilty, because of how shoddy of an
Right.
investigation this were, she should walk. And so all these people who say that Karen should sit in prison, or, you know, it doesn't matter, she did it.
They should be mad at the police too.
Right, exactly. They should be more mad by their rationale at the police than the people who find that she's innocent are upset with the police, because quite frankly, this is how due process works, right? Even if you did commit this crime that is alleged against you, then they have to prove it. They have to have a chain of custody. They have to have an airtight investigation in order to lock you up. And I would hope that if you ever were put in handcuffs and accused of a crime, that you would want, you know, the highest of standards in order to put you behind bars, right? So if you're still looking at all this and saying that she should sit in prison, then I question the level of respect that you have for the due process afforded to you by the United States Constitution.
Right. If you're okay with putting someone behind bars, looking at how this was handled, that's scary. And I was, you know, I'm always comparing cases. Lori, I hate to keep going back to this, but you know, I talked about the Idaho case where her son and daughter were buried. There's more to this story. And right now she's been convicted of 3 murders in Idaho, and now she's in Arizona, and she is on trial. She's representing herself, which is a good time, for the murder of her 4th husband. This happened before the children were killed. Okay. And that trial is happening right now. In fact, there's closing arguments tomorrow. She'll probably be convicted tomorrow. But I'm watching this trial this past week, and they were talking about how they had a log where anybody that would walk inside and out of the house, they like had to sign in the time they were walking into the building, like what they were doing. They brought in a crime scene services vehicle that was like equipped with all this stuff. They took her husband's name was Charles Vallow. They took his bloody shirt. They have this like machine that dries wet evidence. They put it in this little shirt. I posted a photo of it. I was like, what? They didn't lay it out on butcher paper? Like it's night and day. I have issues with that police investigation, but that's a story for another time. Parts of it, like I feel like they didn't, they followed all the proper like 101 steps, right? Like they did this, like, you know, the chain of custody, the care of the evidence. Like they just, it is like night and day between that case and the way they handled the investigation for John O'Keefe. It just blew my mind. It blew my mind. And like, well, it shouldn't, because that's how it should be done. Right. That's like part of like being made to feel like we're crazy. Like, you know, but it's
like coming up for air to see another case that's done the way that it should. You feel like you're kind of coming back into the real world, or putting your glasses on and being like, oh, things have edges. Right? All these things don't just blur and mold into one object. They actually are separate objects. And seeing things clearly again like that in a case like that, just, you know, it makes you feel like you're going back into breathing a bunch of dust again every time you look at this John O'Keefe investigation.
Right. So, I mean, I am not anti-police. Like I said, my husband he was a civilian, but he was an employee of the public information officer. Like, you know, I am not anti-police, but just watching this, it's so disheartening is the word, I think. Just seeing this. And then, I watched that interview yesterday with, his name is Detective Ray Hermosillo, talking about his role in the investigation, finding JJ and Tylee and getting justice for them. And just like it restored my faith. It restored my faith in law enforcement, that like it's not all like this,
Oh,
it's
right.
not like this.
Nor
there
should
are
it be.
guys out
And
there.
I strongly support law enforcement. I strongly support our military. I'm a lot like you. I have, not a lot of personal ties to law enforcement, but I was raised to respect them. I have had personal encounters with great police officers,
Yeah.
great deputies. And, when I see this, and, there are certain wedges that have been driven between law enforcement and the civilian population.
Yeah.
And this type of blatant misconduct, and then a complete lack of regard for how it makes the civilian population feel about law enforcement. This is what perpetuates those wedges that we want to see lifted between the sorry, my dogs are barking. But we want to see those wedges lifted between the civilian population and law enforcement, especially as people like us who support law enforcement. So, in your line of work, what types of accountability do you typically see if something like this is done? I mean, where does the buck stop typically when you are in your line of work and maybe there was some form of either a mistake or misconduct? What do you typically see happen to hold those bad apples, so to speak, accountable? It normally doesn't go this far, does it?
For the police, you mean? Like what? I mean, this instance is like, they went so far as to have an audit, and they, half of the community fought that after seeing
Right.
all of this out there being the laughing stock. Like, everybody is joking about the red Solo cups and the leaf. Like, everybody is like just laughing. And so, but half the community fought that so hard. And then I don't know what's going to, it's an extreme step to have an audit. They ended up doing it. I don't know this company, whether it was any good. Like, we've seen their results, their dismissiveness of, it's fine that he lost his gun and badge. It's no big deal. But it's very difficult to have repercussions against the police. It's not like, you don't get to sue them
Right.
for misconduct. Like, I keep thinking about that in the part of the Daybell case, the Arizona portion. Like, there's some, while I said like the 101 investigative steps were very well done, like they just once they kind of left the scene, they just forgot about that case. And there were some major red flags that, had they just done some very simple investigating,
Right.
they may have arrested Lori and her brother, Alex, that day or sooner, and those kids might still be alive.
Oh.
There's nothing that the family can do. It's, we in Canton, you've got half of a community demanding change, and but what's going to come of that? I don't know.
Well,
And you see how difficult it is to fire a police officer. Like, we saw with Michael Proctor how that dragged on, and you can't sue them. It's very difficult to fire them. I don't know. It's scary. It's sad.
that really is. And the standard that was publicly presented to the rest of the country for the Massachusetts State Police. I mean, there have been, I can't tell you how many TV specials, movies that show like the Boston PD and the MSP as being kind of the gold standard for a well-oiled machine, right? And then now, I mean, I follow the MSP on Twitter.
Yeah.
Every time that they post that there's a DUI checkpoint, all I see underneath are comments showing check for these two, and it's a photo of Proctor and a photo of Kevin Albert. I almost said Frodo,
Yeah, right.
like Frodo Baggins, but you know, the first thing people do is, like you said, joke about it, because this has been the laughing stock of the country, and it really is upsetting that, you know, there isn't some type of recourse.
Right. I mean,
Now.
let's say like Michael Proctor, let's say he really does believe that Karen did this, right?
Uh-huh.
So like, why isn't he working, overtime to put this case in with a nice little bow on top to present it to the prosecution? Why isn't he doing everything by the book so that it cannot be questioned? This is a cop. This is another cop who is dead. Why aren't you, and even for a non-cop who is murdered, but why isn't he doing every single thing by the book? Why, when they
Right.
found 2 or 3 pieces of taillight on January 29th, 2022 in the evening, why weren't they like, okay, block off this house. It's dark now. Have somebody sitting outside all night long. We'll be back at sunrise. We are melting this snow. We are tearing up this yard. We are finding every single piece of evidence. We, like that's just one example of one of the ways, why weren't they doing that? Instead, it's like, we're just going to drive by on the way to work. We're drinking our coffee. We're just going to drive by, look out the window. The snow was melting. What might reveal itself? Like, that's it.
Never
And
how it
then
should be done.
we're crazy people for having questions and not being able to trust that. And then you see the kind of human that Michael Proctor is, and we're supposed to believe this has integrity. He has integrity. This investigation has integrity. Like, how can you trust anything that he has done? And I got so frustrated when people were like, "Oh, I can't believe he was fired for his personal texts on his personal cell phone." That is one of the reasons, this derogatory, defamatory, whatever they call, these texts. But like,
Right.
way more than that. He didn't take a photo of the freaking taillight of the most crucial thing. You could have just pulled out your little phone and taken a picture of the taillight. You didn't, you got this Sally Port video and you kept it in your paper file for 2 years and didn't turn it over. It's not just the texts. You didn't tell anyone that you have a close connection with Chris and Julie Albert and that family. You didn't tell people that. You didn't see a problem with that. You didn't interview Colin for 18 months,
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm.
It's more than the texts. Like,
Exactly.
it's just, we've got mistakes. And you talked about the time that he, took the car, and then with the stand-up guy, he calls the medical examiner a whack job. Like, that's just,
Mhm.
the way, that's just who he is. And, we're supposed to
And
believe.
not just Proctor, too. The other people who partook in those conversations that he had, some of whom were his superiors.
Yeah.
One of them even reacted to one of those
Yeah.
abysmal jokes. It was just insane to me. And you know what that showed me is that that's the culture
That's the culture
there.
And, he said on the stand about those, the texts, the late night texts with his buddy, that, and everyone, and you hear on Twitter that like was just venting. He had just seen, a cop was murdered and he was so upset. He was just mad. In the documentary, you saw that clip of him and Yuri going to arrest Karen. Did you see that? And under his breath in the camera, he's like, crazy, just calling her names. Didn't call her whack job cunt, but he called her crazy. And, that's who he is. That's just who he is. It's gross.
I just,
Yeah. And Yuri wasn't like, Yuri was with him that day. Like, didn't shut it down. No one shut it down. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Nobody stopped him. And
it's locker room talk, he said.
And the way they twisted that too, because remember, Proctor's words in that under his breath conversation with Buchanan was, she's being arrested for murder and she's more worried about how she looks on TV. Okay, wait a second here. Let's go back to what she actually said. She had just woken up. She didn't have undergarments on. She needed to get medication, and she made it pretty clear in her words to you that, sorry boys, she's on her cycle and needed to get some things to take care of that, because she's about to go and sit in a police car and she's got shorts on. Too, loose shorts. So, I mean, those are some things that anybody would be concerned about, no matter what you're being arrested for. No matter whether you're under arrest or not, leaving your house that way is something I wouldn't want to do under any circumstance.
Right.
So I just can't believe they spun it that way, that she's more worried about how she's going to look on TV.
You see how crazy she is. Yeah.
That blew my mind. Completely blew my mind. This, like you said, that there are a lot of cases that we could go back and forth with and compare all day, but one that really, I hope you saw this, and you did say that you follow Melanie Little.
Yes.
I was appalled when I saw the direct contrast between how Judge Cannone acted in Karen Reed's, with Penny McGee. Oh my word. I mean, I didn't see much of a difference in how the Commonwealth behaved. I mean, I would expect no less, I suppose, for them to charge somebody with homicide when somebody with umpteen other
argument when you have
Right. Yeah. I'm scared now that something's going to happen to my husband when I'm in the same room.
I know.
But
when she ruled from the bench, like immediately, as soon as closing arguments were over, she did not go back to think about anything. She ruled immediately. Yeah.
Right away. All charges.
Yeah.
All charges. So how often do you deal with judges either directly or indirectly? Because the way I see things going on there is that they're all getting their paycheck from the same place, right? So they are in some form or fashion co-workers, and there seems to be just too much familiarity there. I mean, she fought the rotation that pre-trial was supposed to have happened. How, in your experience, how crooked is she?
I don't know that I would say crooked. I know some of the attorneys are like, I'm an officer of the court, and I can't say that I'm not an officer of the court, but I do work for one. So,
so like,
I do see,
here's A and here's B. Like, where on the spectrum would you?
I am, for the past couple of years, my case is in front of 4 specific judges in federal court. And but like when I have done criminal defense, like you even see it on trials you're watching on YouTube, that they do tend to, a lot of judges do tend to be prosecution, a little bit more prosecution leaning. But I think that I read or heard that Judge Cannone was a defense attorney in her day.
She was a public defender.
She's a public defender, right? Like, so that's crazy to me to see how, I don't know that she's corrupt.
Mhm.
like I think she does not like the spectacle of all of this. And which is, so then why did she get
That's
herself back on?
understandable.
Like you said, she, changed the rotation so that she would, keep this case. But, and, she really does not like, Alan Jackson. She doesn't like the spectacle. She doesn't like Karen Reed. And I don't understand a lot of what she does. Like that day with it enrages me, like makes me crazy that she, the shaking day, the what was the grave concerns day, and
Oh,
the way
yeah.
she reacted over something that turned out to not be, that Hank Brennan didn't learn from the feds, that the defense had turned, like the way she reacted to that. And then you've got the Sally Port issue, which I think is like, is even more extreme. And she is not at all bothered by that. It is
Mm-mm.
not at all. Like, why? Where is the outrage at the Commonwealth? Like, if comparing to other cases, the Alec Baldwin case, the piece of evidence that was not turned over in that case that caused it to be dismissed was like not relevant to this particular issue. It was
Right.
bullets from, I think, another movie set or something, and they put it under a different case number and it didn't get turned over. It wasn't, a bullet involved in this shooting. It was like related ammunition, and
And they
that
said, you
dismissed.
don't get to decide what's relevant. Yeah.
In the Karen Reed case, this is a key issue. I mean, and they have had it for, like, Proctor had it for 2 years. They have 6-hour increments of how many days, like, and none of that has been disclosed. And the inverted video,
Right.
like,
And
why
then she
wasn't she
had,
outraged that the Commonwealth perpetrated a fraud on the court
Mhm.
and the jury? Like, she's cool with that. She's cool.
And then not
That's
only was she
okay.
cool with it, she got upset at the defense for their reaction to it. I
Yeah.
mean, they showed a they showed some surprise and some shock, and she kind of reprimanded them about
Yeah.
reacting to it. That was quite surprising to me. And then,
There's a
some
lot
of
of
her
unfairness.
rulings,
Yeah.
right? And then in a direct conflict with her prior rulings, such as Dr.
Medical.
Rentschler being able to attest to Officer O'Keefe's injuries,
Right.
and then saying that Dr. Crosby, who also is not a medical doctor,
Right. We don't even know what kind of veterinary science, something.
right? But he's allowed
Mhm.
to speak to those injuries. I don't know what's going on here. It
Yeah. Yeah. And and the funniest thing, do you remember, last year when they did the voir dire of the crash daddies, and when she had said, in a medical, you have to have an MD to be able to opine on injuries. And then
Mhm.
a couple weeks later, Dr. Scordy Bello is on the stand at trial, and she is asked, I can't remember what question prompted it, but she was like, I don't know. You would need a biomechanical engineer to answer that question. We've got one.
No
He's just not around.
way. We've got a couple of those. Oh my goodness. Um,
Yeah,
oh,
it's hard
oh,
to wrap your head around the, like, I cannot believe, like, I'm not surprised that she did not dismiss the case. I cannot understand or believe why there wasn't a hearing.
right.
And her order kept saying things like, it is unclear why. Here's how you clear it up. You put them on the stand and you ask them, like, that you need to, like, this is, why doesn't she want to get to the bottom of this? So maybe that's why people were like, the corruption thing. I can understand that. Like, maybe there's a reason she doesn't want to get those answers. But that's
Exactly.
outrageous.
Right. Like why
Maybe-
and the prosecutors too. Why don't you just want to get to the truth? That's the oath you took.
Right.
You know, like why is a conviction being conflated with justice here?
Right.
Because this just seems like you just wanting to put this case to bed as quickly as you can to me.
Right. Like when I was saying, like, why, we were talking about like putting away a woman for the rest of her life based on, this sloppy work. Like, why
Mhm.
aren't they doing it? They're just, it's like a disinterest. Like they're just, we're going to put this on the way it is, flaws and all. They don't even think that there's flaws. They don't even, they don't even, they're proud of it. They're proud of it. And that I can't understand that.
I really don't think they are, though.
You
I think
do?
they just don't want to admit that they're not proud of it. I mean, and one thing that
Maybe.
showed me
Maybe.
that was Hank and Jackson's little back and forth about having a police expert. When Hank said, "Oh, well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to bring in an expert saying that this was just the best investigation that ever was done?" And
Yeah.
Jackson saying, "Yeah, actually, that's called a rebuttal.
Do it.
So
Do
do
it."
it."
I mean, I do
Um,
think though, they seem to think it's like, oh, I think any indication, anything that they will say about any admitting that there's a flaw is just like the leaf blower solo cup part of it. And it's way more
mhm.
than that.
Oh, definitely. Speaking of law and speaking of impeachment, I don't know if you saw this, and chat, I don't know if you saw this. Please feel free to share. This is a little something because I'm from Florida, so I feel a personal obligation to, any part of this of this whole case that comes from Florida, right? So, this is some Florida man shit if I've ever seen it.
Oh God. I used to live in Florida. I lived in Florida for a while, for 5
Did
years.
you? Oh wow. Okay, I mean,
So I'm familiar with Florida man.
Depending on what part of the state you live in, it can be a great place. There are other places that is like a little bit of a teeth optional zone. There are parts of it that get a little Alabama, right? Well, there was a time when Dr. Crosby, the dog bite expert for the Commonwealth, who is supposed to say that these were not dog bites, right? Look at this Jeffrey Dahmer-esque stuff. Animal control head, being Dr. Crosby, resigns over employee who butchered and ate a pig named Fluffy in the facility's care. This was
Are you serious?
This was an adoptable pig, Carrie. I'm not kidding. By Colin Sterling. So Jim Crosby, the
Why did
director,
Crosby resign? Because he didn't do any. He didn't like
because he
discipline the
knew
employee?
about it. He knew that this employee was taking home adoptable animals, butchering and eating them, and did nothing. There was
And
no,
Crosby was like, "Cool, bring me a BLT." Like,
there was no reprimanding on the part of Crosby. So
how did it get found out?
well, he was at the Bay County Animal Control in Florida.
Where is
There was
that?
an investigation done. Yep. So Bay County is around Panama City.
Okay.
So this is up in the Panhandle. There was an investigation that determined that he condoned the actions of this employee whose name was Ivan Rogers.
Yeah, when did
this
this happen?
2017. So about 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago. He
They
still
were
to this
taking
day,
pets from slaughtering them and making bacon.
yeah, and he still remained employed by the animal shelter, indicating that the overseeing agency was more concerned with the organizational issues that allowed the incident to happen than the actual slaughter and consumption of an animal in their care. This is Can this
Wow.
be brought before the court in the Karen Reed case? Because this does not
There's someone
sound.
saying 3.5 Houston is saying Auntie Bev won't let this in, and she probably won't. She probably won't.
I mean, this has to speak though to his credibility.
I know. But then they'll say, we can't bring in Richard Green. And I bring up Richard Green's, charges or whatever. And I
those
think that
charges were dropped.
right.
It was.
Didn't the defense file a motion not to bring up any witnesses' prior bad acts? I don't know if that would fall under this because they were kind of filed that so that I think kind of didn't say Richard Green, but we think that was what that was about. And I wonder,
right.
I wonder if this would preclude. But wow, but this is unlike Richard Green's issue was not related to his job. This is like related
Correct.
to Dr. Crosby's work.
Exactly.
And so maybe it could be.
Oh my gosh. Justice
That'll make the jury real mad.
Oh my.
Oh my God.
But
I wonder how they found out. I wonder if an employee was a whistleblower or something. I wonder how that got.
Let me read a little further down about how the investigation was started. Let's see.
So he resigned from that position and
he did. He resigned. But this pig was adoptable.
Yeah.
And there actually were two families interested in taking this pig home.
They probably had kids. They were probably like, hey, we're going to get a pet pig. And then they go to the shelter to get it. And they're like, sorry,
he's been eaten.
Made a ham sandwich. Sorry, kids, your pet. Oh, my God.
I mean, hopefully they didn't tell the kids and get their hopes
right?
up, hopefully it was going to be a surprise.
Oh, my God. Wow. That is wild. There's nothing that would surprise me anymore in this case.
But I really am interested though because like you said, this does speak directly to his credibility. This did have to do with his career, right?
Yeah.
So can this be impeachment evidence?
I don't know.
Boy, oh boy. I've got to find out.
I know, right? And hasn't Brennan said he would be he's like a rebuttal witness. So he would not be in their case in chief. He would be there to rebut Dr. Marie Russell and Garrett Wing, right? But I don't understand.
Probably.
Isn't is he the witness that is somewhat like what they're calling the animal behaviorist?
Correct.
Like what? So I don't quite understand his purpose, I guess.
Well,
he did the mold of Chloe's teeth, and they're not allowed to bring that in. The Chloe's teeth thing. Judge Bev actually did say you can't bring that in. So what is he there to say?
Yeah, you can't convince me that that's Chloe's mouth. First of all, that's actually Chloe. Secondly, forensic odontology of any kind, of people, of animals, is already a junk science.
Just ask Adam Rowley because he said it last trial.
And I don't know. I'm sure you've heard of the Innocence Project, being in the line of work that you're in. They have said that one of the first things that they look for when they are finding cases to take is convictions that came either solely or primarily from forensic odontology, because it was proven to be so bad. And part of the reason of it is when you bite into an apple, that apple is still, it's stagnant. It's a rather hard object that's being held in the same place, right? But if you are biting a living human, not only is it softer being tissue, but it's also more than likely moving. So the victim is pulling back and that kind of thing. But I think the purpose of Crosby really would be for rebuttal, because you can't, as a prosecutor, go before a jury and say, here's what it wasn't. Right? You have to put your story, your theory forward and say, here's what we allege that it was. So yeah, it has to be for rebuttal purposes.
Well, and I think kind of in the beginning, before we actually heard Dr. Scorti-Bello testify, there was a little bit of that with her. Like, I think a lot of people, myself included, were skeptical of her because she included something in her report that basically that it didn't appear to be a fight. And like you're talking about, like what it wasn't, like, well, it also wasn't a drowning. It also wasn't a shooting.
Right.
Like that's not normal, right? Like that you don't put what it's not. But however, come trial, she has become one of the best witnesses for the defense, in my opinion. Like, I think they should play up, and maybe they didn't know in the first trial how she was going to testify. And now that they do, I want them to use her as much as possible to be like, the Commonwealth tried to convince their own medical examiner that this was a pedestrian strike. They tried so hard. They sent in Michael Proctor and Jerry Buchanan they showed her all the evidence that they are about to show you, the jury. They showed her everything, and she could not come to that conclusion. She could not, no matter what they showed her, no matter how hard they tried. She sent off his brain. She did all these things trying to get an answer, and she could not. And it was because these are not, her quote, the classic injuries you see in a pedestrian strike. They could not convince her, and they're here now to try to convince you. Like, are you smarter than a medical examiner? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, she didn't buy what they're selling, and they're selling the same thing to y'all that they did to her. And she, when it came time to sit down with the pen and paper and list the manner of death, she could not say that it was a homicide. She could not say that it was a vehicle strike.
Now, this is just kind of the cogs turning here. I wonder how many times she was approached by the investigators, right? They texted about it, right? I mean, it's documented that they did try at least to get her to change certain elements of her report. Okay, 3.5 Houston. This is a Raz, and it's like from their juice series. Like, it's supposed to taste like some kind of gushy thing, and it's a blue raspberry gush. Yep. Been off cigarettes for a while, and this is my in-between phase, right?
There you go. All right, but your cogs are turning. You were in there how many times?
So I wonder how many times she was approached, and I wonder if it doesn't appear to be from a fight, may have been some kind of compromise on her part.
Concession. Yeah.
Like, maybe she was trying to throw a bone to Proctor.
But it's funny because when Miss Little questioned her, she asked her very specific question. Could this have come from a punch? Yes, that's possible. Could this have come from being hit in the head with a weight, a dumbbell? Yes. Like, she answered yes to every, she put that little note in her report, but on the stand, she had to say it's possible.
Yep. And so there's definitely a level of integrity there, which I will, I commend her for, because if these investigators really were giving her any kind of pressure, I will say bravo to you, Dr. Scorti-Bello, because she, could very well have been pressured into, doing a lot worse, right? So,
well, and I want to know when or if she knew about the Proctor text messages. I don't feel like Lally prepped his witnesses very well at all. So I don't even know. I wonder if she even knew that he, those text messages had come out and that he had called her a whack job. But we were talking about Penny McGee. Did you see that medical examiner? She was did you see her? I mean, basically,
Very
she
argumentative.
testified that if someone says boo and another person dies, it's homicide.
What in tarnation? The only time I can find, as a layperson, that you could convince me that they quite literally call it homicide by heart attack. But the only way you could convince me that a homicide by heart attack is plausible is if perhaps, you're in a car and your car gets held up, all of a sudden you're surrounded by people at gunpoint and you, out of fear, have some kind of a cardiac event.
Yeah.
From that real fear, not being spooked because somebody jumped from around the corner to surprise you, but real fear from a real dangerous situation.
Right.
I can see that being an actual homicide by heart attack, but this whole, if somebody jumps from behind a bush and says boo, and she really...
Well, thankfully, she wasn't the ME in this case. Can you imagine? I mean,
no
I'm grateful for Dr. Scrittybello.
No shit. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't imagine what this case would have looked like had that medical examiner from the Peggy McGee case.
A homicide,
Ooh-wee.
Yeah.
No kidding. No, this is from the chat. Nobody was ready for the FBI to step in and hand over those messages. Yeah, from the Commonwealth. No kidding. 100%.
Yeah. I wonder at what point they got their hands on those. If it was in the TUI document dump in February of last year before the trial. Is that when those messages came out?
That's the first time
I wonder
that
if
I'm aware of that they got
were going
anything.
I wonder though if the Commonwealth knew, Proctor telling Lally, they took my phone, you're gonna find some shit. I would love to know how that conversation went down.
Me too. Was there some kind of, hey, heads up?
Yeah.
By the way. Now, I mean, there was, I think that conversation had to have happened pretty quickly if it did, because there was a subpoena in March of 2022, correct? Chat, please correct me if I'm wrong on the time frame, but Yannetti and Jackson said that they, as the defense attorneys, received a subpoena from the Department of Justice to
that was
begin
in
to
September
send their
of 2022.
Oh, was it September? Okay, thank you.
I think it was a little bit later. I don't even know if Jackson was on the case at the time, because it was just a couple months after it happened. I don't know when he joined. Maybe he was, but it was before anybody knew about Hoslong to die in the cold. I mean, it was early. It was early.
Very early. Man.
Yeah.
But
that blew my mind
really
that
hope,
day when Hank was like, well, I didn't know, Hank's wondering how the FBI, how they decided what to send to ARCA, how they got this information. And when Yannetti stood up and said, I got a subpoena for my file. And Hank was he was like, I didn't know about that. And it's like, maybe because you're the target, maybe because your office is the target. Did that not enter your head? I don't know.
I as much as I don't pity Brennan, I do understand that he does have a lot that he had to digest.
Yeah.
Right. But I wish that he, instead of being so aggressive to the defense, that would have been nice to know. Comment that came from him
it is faux outrage for sure.
It is
pounding on the podium makes me sick, and I thought he was going to stomp his foot the other day. I knew this was the exact issue I warned you all about. It just was
I thought he was about to like
No,
hold his fist
it was
down
too
by,
it was
you know,
too much.
turned outward and hold them down by his hips, like hold his fists like that. I imagined him in my mind's eye with
Mhm,
that stance. That
mhm.
would have been something. But yeah, that you're right. I really think he's trying to bring some equity to the level of hide the ball that has been done, you know, almost to kind of water down the level of that you've seen from the Commonwealth to kind of make it look like, well, they've done it too, Your Honor. They're doing it now too. So
Yeah,
but yeah, when he said that would have been nice to know, I was
I know.
thinking, you know, all you had to do was watch the first trial and you would have known,
Right? Ask
right?
Lally. Ask the guy sitting next to
Mhm.
you. And I love the it's so self-righteous, like, "We honored our discovery obligations, and this is late," and I'm like, "You all just turned over discovery the day before, but, like, we know you weren't here last time, but, like, you kept a important video in a paper file," whatever that means, like, you don't like, it
For
just
how
blows my
long?
mind that he carries on like that about discovery when I get Judge Bev doesn't care about the Sally Port video, so I guess he can act like that. I don't know. It
Right,
gets
right. It's like you're one to talk, but you know, it's a little ironic. It really is.
yeah.
So, how do you think Jackson is going to be in his opening statements versus how he was in the closing arguments?
Oh
That's
man,
coming. It's in 2 days.
I know. I hope it is John O'Keefe was not hit by a car and a car did not hit John O'Keefe. Like I hope it is just like focusing on that rather than the whole framed thing. I do think they're going to have to get into the shenanigans of all the weirdness that was going on with the butt dials and the Google searches. Like, but I don't know that they're going to do the whole conspiracy frame thing. And I really hope he
Mhm.
focuses on, the physics, the science that this did not happen, and
Right.
and the investigation being so bad. Like I hope he focuses on how badly. I hope he says the police failed John O'Keefe somewhere in
Yeah.
his opening.
And that's reasonable doubt too, just pounding that in. I heard, oh, who was it? Brother Counsel. He went on to Brian LTL Media's show not too long ago and said, in Jackson's closing arguments, I only heard him bring up reasonable doubt 3 times,
Yeah.
and I really feel that Jackson may have given too much credit to the jury as far as their common sense goes or
Yeah.
their layperson's knowledge may go,
Yeah.
or that they knew that each little piece that he was referring to was enough for reasonable doubt.
Well, I think
And
with that
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Ronnie's interview, after listening to him, it became like we're so wrapped up in this case in terms of like this injustice, right? Like this,
Mhm.
how could the police have failed one of their own so badly? Why, why is all this shady stuff going on? Why is this powerful family not being asked questions? Like it's this good versus evil case to all of us who see what's
Mhm.
happening and are so passionate about it. To the jury, it is a vehicle hit and run, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
case. So
Yeah.
I think his closing was this like kind of like a theatrical, like good versus evil, like just this, um, because that's how, we have to step back and it's just a vehicle case, and
Yeah.
these are the physics and here's how the investigation was handled. Here's what you have to rely on this solo cup investigation. This is what you have to rely on to convict.
I wish I
And you
could
have to
remember.
believe Trooper Paul. We did, and
Oh,
the Commonwealth wants you to believe that John O'Keefe stood there with his arm out, and it hit, and all this glass just burst right through, right here on his shirt. All these little shards, and made these linear scratches, and then he spun around, hit his head on the frozen ground, but somehow that caused a 4-inch gash, the solid frozen ground. Now, Trooper Paul did say maybe he hit it on the curb, but that's what you have to believe. You have, and then he bounced and rolled into
right.
his final spot.
You had to have, especially if he hit his head on the curb, he would have had to have bounced and
Bounced real
then
far.
yeah.
Yeah.
All without so much as bruising anywhere south of the head.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is
Yes.
just, that's wild to me. One of these days, I'm going to bring up a photo of something that I went through at the age of 18 that resulted in my hip being my hip is in 9 pieces now. I broke
my
all the
God.
ribs on my right side. I still have a bone
no.
fragment in my shoulder. I mean, it was the injuries for me,
Yeah.
but I wish I remembered who said this so that I could accredit the brilliant mind who did say it. But maybe it was Nan. She's been on this show a couple times, but there was somebody who said, I hope that the defense this time around brings Arca in first
Yeah.
as the first witnesses that the jury sees, so that the defense doesn't appear like this kind of conspiracy theorist type of
Yeah.
defense. It looks more like, okay, this is coming from a place of medical science and physics, and
Yeah.
that they're applying those laws first and then adding the rest of, oh, isn't that funny later, all these coincidences later, but starting from a place of Arca and then following that with Dr. Marie Russell and Dr. Sheridan, and then adding the
Sheridan
rest
is
on as
in this
well.
time, which is good. Dr. Sheridan he was the older man. He is not on their list, but I understand they have a different medical examiner. But yeah, then those witnesses and like the Richard Green and that
Right.
makes sense.
Adding all that on kind of as the icing to
Yeah.
the cake. But yeah, I wish I could remember who it was so that I could kind of give them credit for it. But I strongly agree with that maybe we put Arca first and then have the rest be icing, right? Put the
Yes.
big rocks into the bucket. It's like that story. If
I
you
also
put the big rocks
understand-
in the bucket first.
Yeah, I also
then add
understand
the little
the
ones.
last, though, they, having them go on last, that's the very last thing that the jury hears. It's that might be what sticks in their mind. Putting on all these other witnesses, could they forget what they heard? It's just, it's a tricky one, right? Like,
That's true. That's true. You're right. But definitely save some stinger
yeah.
for the end. But man, I'm so excited. What are you the most excited to see again? Like come Tuesday and beyond?
I'm excited to see what's new with these new experts that they have. I am not looking forward to hearing Hank Brennan's voice. Like, we thought Lally, it was hard to listen to Lally, and I would always try to listen to him on 2x speed. It was painful, and I feel like it's gonna just be worse with Hank Brennan. But I'm looking forward to the new witnesses and what they've got a new medical examiner. They have Garrett Wing, and that sort of thing. Like, I want to see what's different. I think the Commonwealth can't change its case. Those are its facts. Like, how they present them differently. I don't know, but they cannot get away from Trooper Paul, whether it's through him or not. Their theory is that John O'Keefe was struck on the arm, only broke the taillight with his arm, spun around like that. that's their case.
But it's a hard case. It's definitely a hard case. It's a case that should never have gone to trial in the first place. It's a case that certainly shouldn't be tried a second time. But man,
Right.
Carrie, do you think that if for some reason there's another mistrial without prejudice called, do you think they would do this again a third
I
time?
think it depends on, when is Morrissey up for reelection? Is it 2026?
2026,
So
if
next
I'm not
year?
mistaken.
I
And
think
there
that
is
a big
someone running against him, Juna Perkins. So
yeah, I
we'll
think
see.
that that might factor into a decision to retry. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think
That's
I
really
think
funny
they
that you
would want
mentioned that.
to, with this, I think they would want to. Um,
Mhm.
I think that like I said, they have no shame, and
Yeah.
I think they would want to. I don't know. I feel like the election might play a role in that.
It might. It might. Funny that you mentioned that. If you like other cases and you like comparing cases, look up Commonwealth versus Sean Ellis from 1993. They tried him 3 times.
What was the crime?
Eventually,
Murder case?
murder of a Boston police officer, a detective, a Boston detective. Sean Ellis ended up wrongly serving over 20 years in prison for murdering this police officer, right?
Yeah.
And there were 2 mistrials. They tried him a third time, got a conviction. They kind of had an evolving theory, kind of like what we're seeing now. And after they were able to show, quite a few things, it took a whole lot for the SJC to overturn that conviction. The Commonwealth then said they were going to try him a 4th time. There's a very interesting documentary about it on Netflix called Trial 4.
Oh, okay.
But
I've
like you
seen that. I didn't
mentioned,
realize it was a Boston case. Okay.
it was a Boston case. And there ended up being an election for DA, and there was going to be a change. So the incumbent lost. And with this new DA coming in, they eventually said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and drop the charges for this 4th trial. But it was so nasty the way that they did it. They did this press conference, and what they said was, it's because of degradation of
The evidence, like too much time.
evidence and things like that. But we just want to get that last word in and make sure that the public knows that factually Sean Ellis is still culpable.
Was he behind
just-
bars? Or was he out on bail like Karen, or was he behind bars during all the trials?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was able to get out on bail. He had two very good defense attorneys who Sean to this day still says were great. He did have to fire them in order to do one of his appeals because he was almost out of options and needed to be able to say, well, maybe I didn't have the best representation. That's one way that you can appeal. But I mean, it was crazy to me to see the parallels in those 2 cases. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
I wrote that case.
down. I don't know. There's a really great a podcast. It's an actual podcast, not YouTube, called In the Dark. I think it's their first season of it, and it is about a man named Curtis Flowers in Mississippi who was tried 6 times. 6 times. He was a black man in Mississippi, tried 6 times for murder, and
can you repeat the name of that podcast? I'm putting a note of it into my phone.
In the dark, and they've got a couple. They do different stories in the seasons. I think Curtis Flowers is season 1 or 2, and it is a crazy story. And there was so much evidence that he did not do it, and the prosecutor would not let it go. It finally eventually got up to the United States Supreme Court. So it's fascinating. So listen to
Holy
that.
macaroni, 6 times.
Yep.
Do you know from the top of your head, like maybe who may hold the Guinness World Record for how
No.
many times?
No.
Loudflower says it's in season
He got
2.
convicted 4 times, all of which were overturned on appeal. And then the other 2, I think one was a mistrial. Maybe 2 were mistrials. 4 were convictions, all overturned.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh my
But
goodness.
anyway,
That's painful. I mean, I just don't understand why we have mistrials without prejudice at the end of a trial. In my opinion, I think if it's kind of early on, and this is just me kind of, speaking as a layperson,
yeah.
of course, but just in terms of double jeopardy, right? I don't find that to always be fair. So,
Yeah.
but man, we've been going for a good bit, and I don't want to make y'all miss the other shows, because there are some other really big shows going on right now on YouTube. So, Carrie, before we
Yes.
wrap it up, can you tell us where we can find you other than this episode, of course? Let us know your Twitter X username so that those of us who have not heard of you before can follow you and find you
Yep,
again.
It's at Carrie Cherry 75. I had a Twitter account, I think since like 2012, and I never tweeted until last summer. It was after the trial. I did my first like post on this case. I broke down I hit him. I did like a graphic,
Ooh.
because only, there were, 11 or I can't remember if it was 11 or 13 people on the scene. Only 4 of them, heard the I hit him. And they all have some sort of issue, connected to that. And here's what everybody else heard. And that was my very first post, and just started going from there and like digging deeper into this case. But pinned to the top of my Twitter, I have shared a Google Drive.
Google Doc. Yeah, I pulled that up. It's
I've increased I have a file of all the witness testimony, like detailed, almost transcript like, from trial 1. I have all the way through Matt McCabe. I'm really stuck on Jen. I don't know if I want to listen to her again. But I have a timeline. I have photos and like summaries of what everyone testified to, and then I have some folders that like kind of go into the key issues that have to be dealt with, and kind of debunking some of those issues. The I hit him, the hair on the bumper, like why that's not a big deal. The DNA on the bumper, why that's not a big deal. Karen's blood alcohol, why that's not, there are issues with that. So some I told you all, I have a paralegal notebook, and so I put it on the top of my Twitter page. I pinned it there, so has some good notes.
And guys, if you haven't checked out some of the things that Carrie has put up there, please make sure you do, because we need as many legal brains as we can, helping Karen, and also kind of educating the public, right? Because we can't have the wool pulled over our eyes anymore, because as y'all have seen in this case, they will do it. They will take advantage of everybody's lack of expertise. I'm not going to say ignorance, but lack of expertise if possible. So please make sure you follow Carrie. And Carrie, thank you so much for doing this. I commend your courage.
I'm like a big nobody in this case, but like,
oh,
you
stop it. No, you're
talk
not.
about it, and I'm excited to talk about it. So thank you. So somebody finally to talk about it with, because like I said, my family, they're sick of it. And I'm like, we'll just wait, because the trial is starting again in a couple of days.
Exactly. And you're more than welcome back any time to kind of help us get some more clarity with this, because we
Awesome.
all
Yeah,
could use
I'd
it.
love to. Now that I've
Well,
got my,
thank
I've
you.
got my nerves out, I'll be okay to do it again. So thank you so much for
Exactly.
having me.
Now you're more comfortable. Well, we were glad to kind of be your first, so to speak. So we
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
you and we appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so
Bye.
much. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, but you have a great rest of your Easter. Oh, did I remove her by accident? I'm working with a new mouse, a new keyboard, a new monitor. Thank you again, Steve. So yeah, I really appreciate all of those who came to watch Carrie. She is an amazing human, has an amazing mind. So glad to, yes, a new one of those too. I mean, as you maybe know, 3.5 Houston, it's kind of a new thing every week, right? So, but guys, I really appreciate y'all being here. I'm glad to be back. There has been some wildness happening at the day job, and so I'm glad to be back here. So y'all, we will be back possibly tomorrow doing a Karen Read for beginners. Please be sure to thank the mods on your way out. Please be sure to leave your touch DNA evidence on the like button. I need to get my blood sugar up, so I'm going to go ahead and go. But there are plenty of ways that you can help support the channel, mainly by liking the video and by making sure you are subscribed, right? Even if you're just here to troll, it actually helps your fellow trolls find the video by liking and sharing the video. So please make sure you do that. This is not a secret club. So y'all be sure to kind of have your notifications on too, just in case we do come back tomorrow. I have not quite made the decision. So Nikki, thanks so much for being here and for having the team on your back in the mod squad today. And I will see y'all very, very, very soon. Peace, love, and butt dials. Much love to all of you. And we'll be back together again either tomorrow or Tuesday. Y'all take care. Have a great night.